After being publicly rejected by the Wuling Marquis' heir, I turned and married the seventh prince. I aided him in ascending the throne. Later, I served as Empress and then Empress Dowager. Meanwhile, the Wuling Marquis' household fell into ruin, its once illustrious name tarnished. My life was one of nobility, my husband honored, my sons dutiful, and I passed away peacefully in my bed. Yet I was reborn at the age of coming of age. The Marquis of Wuling's wife once again remarked that my chin was too pointed, a sign of a woman destined to bring misfortune to her husband. As I waited for the crown prince to refuse the match, he defied his mother and declared in a clear voice, "Miss Shen possesses a noble destiny that can bring prosperity to the Yen family. I wish to marry her." When I passed away peacefully in Sinaying Palace, surrounded by my children and grandchildren, I reflected that my life had indeed been one of supreme honor and unparalleled splendor. Yet here I was, reborn to the age of coming of age, attending the Wuling Marquis' banquet for the very first time. The Marquis of Wuling's wife had invited a female physiognomist, renowned for her unerring accuracy in foretelling fortune and misfortune, guiding others to avoid calamity. The physiognomist scrutinized my face for a long while before speaking in a cold, clear tone. "A pointed chin is the mark of a woman who will bring misfortune to her husband." The Marquis' wife feigned shock. How could this be? The fortune teller seized the moment to advise, "Marrying such a woman may bring misfortune upon the household's master. For the sake of the family's peace, such a woman absolutely must not enter the gates of our Yen family." The Marquis' wife wanted me to withdraw, believing I sought to climb the social ladder through the Shen family and would use the playful words she once shared with my mother in their maiden days against her. But she was mistaken. I never once sought to climb the social ladder through the Marquis of Wuling's household. In her youth, the Marquis' wife and my mother were close confidants. Both hailed from Yinzhong Commandery. At that time, her background fell short of my mother's, so she deliberately cultivated a friendship with her. At a banquet hosted by my maternal family, she met the Marquis of Wuling. Through this union, she ascended to become a marquise. My mother came from a scholarly family. My maternal grandfather did not favor his daughter marrying into power and privilege, so he arranged her marriage to a young man he was mentoring, my father. Father came from humble origins. He entered the imperial court through the civil service examinations, then served as a local official. After many years of service, he was finally transferred back to the capital. Today, holding a fifth-rank official position, his status stands worlds apart from that of the Marquis of Wuling. The Marquis' wife once shared a bond with my mother. During her pregnancy, they had even pledged their children to each other in a betrothal by the touch of unborn bellies, vowing to become in-laws in the future. Yet after adapting to life in the Marquis' household, she began mingling with the powerful and influential, consorts and noble ladies, and soon looked down upon our humble background. She forgot how unwelcome she had been in Yinzhong Commandery, where only my mother treated her as a sister, bringing her to banquets and often aiding her financially. Alas! The moment she rose in status, she began whispering behind our backs, "I used to admire Xia Lingyao for her scholarly background, her pure-hearted family, and her deep knowledge of literature. But now that I'm in the capital, surrounded by the wealthy and powerful, where talented women abound, I realize she's nothing special." She thought the distance would keep these words from reaching us. Yet no wall is impervious to wind. The words eventually reached my mother's ears. My mother felt she had misjudged people back in her maiden days, mistakenly treating such a person as a sister, and thus ceased all contact with her. Now that my father has been transferred to serve as an official in the capital, the Lady of Wuling seems to have recalled their childhood betrothal, sealed with exchanged tokens, and is now so distressed she can neither sit nor lie down in peace. This was my first appearance at a banquet in the capital. Yet the Marquis of Wuling's wife could no longer contain herself and made her move against me. She knew full well that such words would utterly destroy the reputation of a young woman awaiting marriage. Yet she cared not, as long as she could shatter this betrothal. They wanted to see me overcome with shame and humiliation. lowering my head to endure their slander. But this time, standing before them was not a 15-year-old girl, but a woman who had wielded power within the imperial harem for decades. Meeting her gaze, I replied with neither humility nor arrogance. Mother has often described the lady's demeanor in her maiden years. Though born of humble origins, she did not believe in mystical arts. How is it that after years of wealth and privilege, she now places faith in the words of sorcerers? This is quite different from her youth. What the Marquis of Wooling's wife cherished most was her lineage. She hadn't anticipated me striking at her most vulnerable point. Clutching her handkerchief, she affected a conciliatory tone. Miss Shin, there are so many fine families in the capital. I implore you, for the sake of my maternal heart, to spare my son. I only wish for his lifelong peace. That betrothal by finger-touching was my own rashness. Now it seems you two are destined to be apart. As her words fell, all eyes turned to me, waiting for my humiliation. Everyone knew she now looked down upon the Shin family and wished to break the engagement. Yet she sought to cast the blame upon me. Just as I was about to retort, Yanqing rose and bowed deeply before her, saying, "Mother, Miss Shin possesses a noble destiny that can bring prosperity to the Yen family. Your son finds her admirable and wishes to honor our original agreement by marrying her." The room fell silent. Yanqing was renowned throughout the capital for his filial piety. This was the first time he had ever openly defied his mother. The Lady of Wooling Marquis froze in place, unable to believe her ears. She demanded, "What did you say?" Yanqing declared with unwavering resolve, "I will marry Shin Ziqing." Lady Woolinghouse eyes widened in shock. Her trembling hand pointed at me as she exclaimed, "You would defy your mother for such a woman? If you insist on marrying her, I shall disown you as my son." Her words were too harsh. The atmosphere froze instantly. Everyone turned to scrutinize me, seemingly curious what trick I had used to make Yanqing act so uncharacteristically. But in the next moment, I stepped forward. "Madam, there's no need for anger. I will not marry." The banquet hall fell silent. This time, it was I who refused the marriage. Meeting the scrutinizing gazes, I declared firmly, though the Marquis of Wooling's household is a noble house, I disdain to climb its ladder. Why must you, madam, be so harsh and critical today, subjecting me to such humiliation? With a mother-in-law like you, what daughter would dare set foot in the Marquis's residence? Yan Shiheng's gaze fell upon me, his brow furrowing slightly. His expression shifted several times before settling into deep contemplation. I stepped forward and removed the white jade orchid bracelet from my wrist. This was the token exchanged when you and my mother sealed our betrothal with finger-touching. Today, I return it. The old agreement is null and void. We are no longer bound. The Marquis's wife ordered her attendants to retrieve it, but Yanqing barely managed to intercept them. In the struggle, the jade bracelet clattered to the floor, shattering into 3 pieces. "It seems destined by fate, the will of heaven." He detected the sarcasm in my tone. Yan Shiheng's expression turned frantic as he shouted, "No!" That momentary lapse confirmed it to me. He had returned. The man who had later witnessed his empire crumble, his family fortune dissipate, and his children perish had returned. I had once seen him, his temples flecked with gray, kneeling outside the palace gates, pleading for his son who had caused a fatal legal case, begging the emperor for mercy. He, a white-haired man, had to bury his black-haired son. Back then, the emperor paid his morning and evening visits, while I resided in the Sinaying palace, living out my days in peace. I turned and left the banquet. Yanqing pursued me, blocking my carriage in the street. His gaze seemed to traverse the years, weathered by time, settling on my face as he asked, "Since you have returned, why not give me one chance to make amends from the beginning?" In that moment, I recalled my past life, when I accompanied the seventh prince to rule the realm and became empress. Back then, he too had to observe the proper etiquette between sovereign and subject, kneeling below the white marble steps, bowing his head to inquire after my well-being, and offering the greeting, "Long live the Empress." I only smiled softly, watching him with a hint of amusement. Yet his voice grew low as he spoke to himself. "I've regretted it, when mother said you were unlucky for husbands. I didn't stand up to protect you, letting her humiliate you at will, and then refusing the marriage under those circumstances, leaving you disgraced and a laughingstock throughout the capital." I lowered the carriage curtain, saying impatiently, "Finished? If so, move aside," seeing my obvious annoyance. His voice filled with disappointment. "Are you waiting for the seventh prince? He chose you out of desperation. Do you think he'd willingly marry you? You know how difficult the road ahead will be. Since you've been given a second chance, why not choose the easier path? If we join hands, why should we fear that the future won't be bright? Yes, I know how difficult the future will be. But I've conquered such trials before. What is there left to fear now? In my past life, I was publicly rejected by the Marquis of Wooling's household, branded a husband killer. No less. How could I have so easily married the seventh prince? It was only because Prince Zhao Qingzhan was gravely wounded on the battlefield, with imperial physicians declaring he'd never walk again. He transformed from a prodigy of both literary and martial prowess into a crippled prince consumed by alcohol. Overnight, his courtyard lay deserted. Even the minister's daughter, his childhood sweetheart, bound to him by deep affection, abandoned him. After his injury, she never once visited him. Instead, she falsely claimed to be gravely ill, and her family used this as an excuse to send her to the ancestral home to recuperate. She feared the seventh prince might petition the emperor for a royal marriage decree at that time. If he asked, His Majesty would surely grant it. The seventh prince had promised that if he returned victorious, he would petition the emperor for a royal marriage decree and marry her in grand style. She desired a husband who was the pride of heaven, admired by all, not a cripple confined to a wheelchair, perpetually drunk, with a violent temper and unpredictable moods. No longer the spirited young man he once was. The emperor felt he had failed the son and wished to restore some of his will, so he took it upon himself to arrange the marriage. All eligible women in the court were registered in a ledger, accompanied by portraits, and the lists were sent batch by batch to the seventh prince's residence. The first few lists were torn to shreds. Finally, Consort Zhuang personally intervened. Faced with his birth mother's earnest pleas, the seventh prince casually made a gesture. The one chosen by that casual gesture was me. Xin Ziqing. The noble ladies all breathed a sigh of relief. They offered polite congratulations outwardly, but behind closed doors, they mockingly called it a match made in heaven, a husband-killing woman and a crippled prince. On the night of our wedding, I saw the legendary seventh prince for the first time. Gone was the youthful war god, once radiant and handsome. Before me sat a hollow shell, a mere shell of a man in his wheelchair, his eyes void and desolate. Everyone laughed at me. Yet, while they mocked him behind his back, I clasped his hand tightly. I journeyed deep into the valley of the Medicine King, enduring 3 months of hardship to persuade the master healer to descend from his mountain retreat and treat him. I personally mastered the art of acupuncture, administering needles daily to aid his recovery. After 3 full years, he stood once more. Dare you wager with me? If the seventh prince returns safely, would he still forsake his heart's deepest love to choose you? Yan Shiheng's words fell like heavy stones. I lifted the carriage curtain once more, and joy lit his face. I sighed softly, then smiled. Do you think what I gained in my past life was mere luck? Without extraordinary resolve and cunning, how could I have broken free from such a desperate situation? Whether the seventh prince chooses me or not, I can live this life well. Why should I look back and settle for less? His expression froze. reflecting on the past. He should have known that my secure position as empress was never built on mere luck. After all, on the eve of the seventh prince's ascension, the daughter of the Minister of Revenue suddenly recovered from her illness. Returning from her ancestral home, she stood in the deep snow and poured out her heart to him, recounting years of hardship. But so what? I still ascended to the position of empress. He held my hand and declared himself, the crown prince must come from the empress. Only my child could become the next ruler. The carriage rolled slowly away, leaving Yanqing standing alone in a daze. This lifetime, I was the one who rejected the Marquis of Woling. I sat quietly in the mansion, listening to the wind and rain. When the osmanthus blossomed, I knew the seventh prince would soon return. Unlike my previous life, this time he returned victorious, unscathed. All civil and military officials gathered outside the Vermilion Bird Gate to welcome him. A grand spectacle. As he entered the city, I heard the people lining the streets cheering and leaping with joy, crowding the road to greet him. Yanqing rushed to find me, seemingly eager to witness my humiliation. The seventh prince had triumphed, returned safely. The young war god's fame surpassed his former glory. The minister's daughter had already gone to the seventh prince's residence to offer congratulations. Heaven made. A perfect match, no unexpected twists could disrupt this union. As for you, of lowly status, even seeing him once was as difficult as climbing to the heavens. You had no further connection with him. Yanshiheng's eyes and brows brimmed with smug satisfaction. He was sowing discord. Indeed, the seventh prince returned victorious. Still that favored son of heaven, exalted and arrogantly proud. His eyes and heart held only the minister's daughter, his childhood sweetheart, bound to him by deep, unwavering affection. How could there be room for anyone else? Given my current status, I truly couldn't see him. Even if we met, his eyes wouldn't notice me. Perhaps it was for the best. This was the life he deserved, a smooth, embroidered path, free from hardship. I smiled calmly. But this reaction only infuriated Yanqing further. He yanked my wrist, his voice icy. You feel no resentment? When he fell into the depths, you were the one who lit his way through the dark night, walking hand in hand with him. Yet now that he stands at the pinnacle, his fame resounding across the land, his choice can only be the minister's daughter. You planted the tree, she enjoys its shade. She seeks advantage and avoids harm, weighing every benefit and cost. But the seventh prince, as he is now, knows none of this. You watched it all unfold. In the dead of night, when you dream, can you truly accept letting her reap the rewards? Perhaps. Beyond resentment, what I desire is something else. I cut him off. In my past life, I accompanied him from the dust to rise, and he held my hand as we ascended to the heights together. He never failed me. This life, starting anew, we owe each other nothing. After hearing this, Yanqing scoffed, not worth it. The seventh prince isn't worth it. That night, a grand banquet was held in the palace, both to welcome the seventh prince and to celebrate his triumph. I had no right to attend such a gathering, yet an inner court official deliberately escorted me inside. Before all present, the seventh prince knelt and bowed, declaring to his majesty, "Your humble son has found one who captures his heart. I beseech your majesty to grant this marriage." Which maiden? The daughter of the Minister of Revenue, seated in the front row, beamed with joy, her delight evident. Envious glances turned toward her from those around. Just as she rose to her feet, the seventh prince spoke again, "Your majesty, I seek to marry Shinziqing, daughter of the junior minister of the Ministry of Imperial Rights. I implore your permission." At these words, stunned gazes turned toward me in unison. Yanqing spilled wine from his cup onto his sleeve, his gaze freezing. The Minister of Revenue's daughter turned ashen, her eyes darting between me and the seventh prince. The atmosphere in the hall froze to a standstill. Just then, the emperor seated high above unexpectedly laughed aloud. Since you have found a woman you favor, I shall naturally grant your wish. The imperial decree granting the marriage was issued on the spot, and congratulatory voices filled the air. As I stood in a daze, my father smiled and urged me. Why haven't you accepted the decree and expressed your gratitude? This time, it seemed there was no room for choice either. It was the same as my previous life, yet different. The similarity was that the marriage was bestowed by the emperor, with no regard for my wishes. The difference was that in my past life, everyone had sneered and mocked, while in this life, their eyes were filled with envy. He remained the emperor's most favored son. The seventh prince stepped over the crowd and approached me. As he moved, his silver-patterned robes flowed gracefully, radiating an air of noble grandeur. Zhao Qingzhan, he had returned, full of vigor and spirit. His features were handsome and noble. His charisma surpassed even his former self. Having subdued the rebellious western realms, he obtained the Qing pearl. Its luminous glow could illuminate an entire chamber, within which images of immortals, jade maidens, cloud cranes, and crimson ceremonial staffs shimmered and danced. I offer this pearl as betrothal gift, he declared, to be with you year after year. He opened the brocade box, its pearl gleaming within, instantly filling the room with radiant splendor. The emperor had bestowed this Shangqing pearl upon him, yet he now offered it as a betrothal gift. A gasp rippled through the crowd, filled with admiration. The foreign kingdom's most precious treasure, worth a fortune. His gaze, intense and burning, fixed upon me. I already heard the whispers they were discussing, questioning why I deserved all this. But what the world envies isn't necessarily what I desire. You never gave me a choice. I lowered my voice, speaking only loud enough for him to hear. His eyes darkened slightly, a self-mocking smile flickering before his gaze hardened. Yes, he replied firmly. Today, there will be only one answer. The crowd's envy trapped me in a no-win situation. He was forcing my acceptance. The emperor watched us with leisurely composure. My father, his face etched with anxiety, frantically signaled to me. Inquisitive eyes scanned the room. Slowly, I extended my hand and took the brocade box. Closing it tightly, the room instantly lost its brilliance. He watched me, his smile radiant, but mine held no warmth. He had crossed the line. After the victory banquet, Zhao Qingzhan's deputy commander fell suddenly ill and died without warning. When I heard the news, I wasn't surprised. It was his doing. After returning home, the Minister of Revenue's daughter, Chu Qianyu, also fell gravely ill. The imperial physicians diagnosed it as a heart ailment. She was gambling, betting that the seventh prince would relent. Yet half a month passed, and the seventh prince never visited. Rumors spread through the streets that the seventh prince had offered the precious Shangqing pearl, a treasure from a foreign land, as a betrothal gift to marry the eldest daughter of the Shen family. Father was overjoyed yet restless with apprehension. Suddenly, Consort Zhuang summoned me to the palace. Whatever the reason, I could not evade it. Upon entering the reed pavilion, I found not only Consort Zhuang but also the minister's wife. Chu Qianyu remained undeterred, forever unable to comprehend the cause of today's upheaval. In her eyes, Zhao Qingzhan had simply changed overnight. Once childhood sweethearts bound by deep affection, they now seemed like strangers. She could never know that in a past life, she had been the callous one, calculating, weighing gains against losses, abandoning him in his darkest hour, casting him into the abyss. Consort Zhuang's face betrayed careful observation. while the minister's wife wore an expression of profound complexity. The moment I entered, she threw herself to her knees. "Miss Shin, I beg you, spare my daughter's life." She and the seventh prince were childhood sweethearts, bound by undying devotion. Now that you've become the principal consort, she won't compete with you. All she asks is the position of secondary consort to fulfill her years of longing. I took a step back, turning slightly to avoid her bow. Calmly, I said, "Madam Chu, please rise. This is the imperial palace, governed by its own rules and protocols. It is not a bustling street where problems can be solved by throwing tantrums." Her expression shifted repeatedly at these words. Caught between kneeling and standing, summoning me today was merely a ploy to coerce my consent by exploiting Chu Qianyue's illness. If I yielded, they would achieve their goal. If I refused, the reputation of being cold-hearted and jealous would surely spread. But now that I've made my position clear, if she persists with her old tactics, she'll be no better than a street corner shrew. She still cherished what little dignity remained, so she slowly rose to her feet. The courage she'd initially mustered to lower herself for her daughter's sake had diminished considerably, and she began to notice the stares of the palace maids around her. Seizing the moment, I spoke. "Madam Chu, I understand what you've said. The seventh prince once explained to me that his feelings for your daughter are purely those of a brother. He warned me not to misunderstand. Given this, even if your daughter is deeply devoted to him, it seems to be a one-sided affection. To agree to your request would be to go against the seventh prince's wishes. Furthermore, the seventh prince is a dragon among men, a phoenix among women. Countless women across the land admire him like fish crossing the river. Am I to welcome them all into my household as concubines?" The minister's wife was rendered speechless by my words, unable to continue. In the end, she could only cast a pleading glance toward Consort Shuang. Consort Shuang found an excuse to dismiss her. Once the minister's wife departed, a hint of approval flickered in her eyes as she looked at me. Poised and composed, cool and collected, not bad. From start to finish, she never truly intended to defend the Chu family. The minister's wife was merely a pawn she used to test me. Consort Shuang had watched the entire confrontation unfold, merely observing how I would respond. Had I panicked, faltered, or shown timidity when the minister's wife attacked, Consort Shuang would have been disappointed. Her greatest fear was that her son had truly chosen a woman from a lowly family, one lacking vision and incapable of handling affairs. If I had yielded to the minister's wife's demands out of concern for my reputation, I would have appeared indecisive and incapable of taking charge in Consort Shuang's eyes. What Consort Shuang sought was a mistress for the seventh prince's household who could navigate social situations with grace and stand on her own 2 feet, a woman capable of being his wise and capable partner. From the moment Chu Qianyue feigned illness to win sympathy and used her supposed devotion as leverage, she had already lost. Her tactics were beneath the dignity of the imperial court. Romantic entanglements have always been a hindrance to imperial families, never an asset. While a prince's principal consort's lineage matters, it is not the sole criterion. Prince Qingzhan's military exploits are already illustrious. He needs no additional glory from his wife's maternal clan. Beyond lineage, this palace cares more whether she possesses wisdom and the capability to handle the responsibilities of this position. Her words made it clear to me. Prince Qingzhan's discernment has not disappointed me. She spoke slowly. As I departed, I approached her, bowed respectfully, and took the opportunity to warn, "The incense within the hall smells unusual. Your Highness, please be cautious." A hint of surprise flashed across her face. Leaving the reed pavilion, I walked along the long palace path, gazing up at the towering palace walls and the square expanse of sky. This place had always been suffocating. Zhao Qingzhan waited at the palace gate, hands clasped behind his back, his brocade robes fluttering in the breeze. "I've been waiting here for you for quite some time." His voice was gentle, his smile like a spring breeze. Yet his words held hidden meaning. When did you return? Faced with my question, he seemed entirely unsurprised. A month ago. I barely escaped that scheme. His injury on the battlefield was itself a conspiracy. His deputy general, bribed by the third prince, had intended to take his life, but instead left him gravely wounded and crippled. Now he has choices. Yet he binds me to him once more, just as in our past life, where our fortunes rise and fall together. I understood our predicament. Starting anew, both his quest for the imperial throne and my desire for a future required fresh strategies. Even if he was no longer a crippled prince, the throne was far from assured. Throughout history, countless princes and nobles had fallen at the final step to the throne. Until the final curtain falls, the game is never over. Becoming my ally offers the greatest chance of victory. If the third prince fails to outmaneuver him, he will surely have other tricks up his sleeve. The path ahead is uncertain. Formidable foes lurk nearby. Starting anew demands unwavering vigilance. He listened to my words, then nodded with a smile. This time, he forced me onto his pirate ship. Your Highness, you knew Consort Zhuang summoned me to the palace with ulterior motives. Yet you stood by coldly? I knew you could handle it. But handling it and willing to handle it are two entirely different matters. I can aid you, but you must grant me one promise. Agreed. Wealth and honor, fame and power, none are beyond consideration. His eyes gleamed slightly as he answered solemnly. He removed half of the black jade lotus-patterned jade token hanging at his waist and placed it in my hand. This serves as our pledge. My gaze fell upon that half token, my mind drifting. This jade token could be split into two, or joined as one. In my past life, when I became his empress, I received this jade pendant. It was only then that I gained his complete trust. I walked slowly past him. When the time comes, I will tell you what I desire. After returning to the Shin household, I secluded myself, appearing every inch the bride-to-be, spending my days embroidering my wedding gown. The wedding is set for next year. But this marriage, I fear, will not proceed smoothly. The third prince is Zhao Qingzhan's strongest rival. Born to the Empress Dowager, he commands the support of the aristocratic clans in court. His Majesty's delay in naming an heir has the princes stirring with ambition. Zhao Qingzhan's injury and disability, all orchestrated by him. That deputy general? Long since bribed by him. Zhao Qingzhan's very existence now posed a grave threat to his position. In terms of exceptional talent and prestige across court and country, the third prince fell far short of Zhao Qingzhan. Yet when it came to lineage, the third prince held the upper hand. As the legitimate son of the empress, his claim was far more legitimate. Had Zhao Qingzhan been mediocre, content to be an idle prince, things might have been different. Yet his military achievements and the supreme favor bestowed upon him by His Majesty had already made him a thorn in everyone's side. Whoever ascended the throne in the future would find no place for him. That position, he must fight for it. Consort Zhuang bestowed many silk robes and jeweled hairpins. Her personal lady-in-waiting came to the mansion herself and said before leaving, "Her ladyship has changed to a new incense." This was her way of telling me that the ill-intentioned individuals around her had been purged. I smiled as I saw her out. Though Mother couldn't decipher the silent riddles exchanged between me and the lady-in-waiting, she rejoiced that I had earned Consort Zhuang's approval. Turmoil erupted throughout the court. The aristocratic families, who had once supported the third prince, shifted allegiance overnight. All now proclaimed that the seventh prince, with his literary and martial prowess, virtue, and talent, was the rightful heir apparent. Court and country alike submitted petitions in unison. This bodes ill. His Majesty favors capable sons. Yet when their prowess and renown surpass his own, suspicion inevitably arises. In my past life, He suffered grave injury and fell into disgrace. Now, however, he shines with unrivaled brilliance, his fame resounding across the land. His circumstances had changed entirely. Yet the court collectively petitioned to make him crown prince, making the suspicion of factionalism and self-serving interests overwhelmingly heavy. If His Majesty was prone to suspicion, the prince might well invite disaster upon himself. But such a maneuver didn't seem like the third prince's style. He had always been relentless, never yielding an inch. This tactic of feigning retreat to advance, it wasn't his way. Meanwhile, the altar of heaven, under construction by the Ministry of Works, was suddenly struck by lightning, igniting a fire. Rumors spread throughout the court and the realm, claiming someone had attempted to usurp the imperial throne, provoking divine retribution. The Minister of Works was held accountable and imprisoned. Yet the rumored usurper was clearly an allusion to Zhao Qingzhan. The altar of heaven was indeed prone to lightning strikes. But this incident was supposed to occur 8 years later. It was not divine retribution at all. The metal objects embedded within the beast-headed ridge ornaments atop the altar, combined with the surrounding ancient trees towering overhead, made it susceptible to lightning strikes during thunderstorms. The wooden roof structure would then catch fire. If someone knew of the future event and deliberately placed metal objects on the roof ridge, combined with thunderstorm conditions, it would induce a lightning strike, to transform an accident destined for 8 years hence into a man-made disaster now, and use it against Zhao Qingzhan. There was only one possibility. Yanqing had defected to the third prince. I penned a few words, sealed them in an envelope, and dispatched it to the seventh prince's residence. Having returned from rebirth, Zhao Qingzhan's gaze remained fixed on the third prince, his overt rival, likely overlooking Yanqing, the shadowy figure who also knew the future. Yan Shiheng's hatred and hostility toward Zhao Qingzhan were no longer concealed. The Wuling Marquis' estate had fallen into ruin step by step, its once illustrious name tarnished. His resentment and hatred had likely been festering for years. His return was bound to become a stumbling block. 3 days later, Zhao Qingzhan claimed illness, and it struck with fierce intensity. The imperial physicians all declared it a relapse of an old ailment. Without rest and recuperation, his life would be in peril. The very next day, he petitioned the emperor for permission to convalesce at Jing Mountain, outside the capital. After his departure from the capital, the rumors gradually dissipated. This move distanced him from the power struggles, allowing those in authority to feel at ease. Though it avoided immediate peril, it was no long-term solution. He couldn't remain at Jing Mountain forever. He had killed that deputy general, returned triumphantly, and seized the initiative. Yet the third prince and Yanqing struck back with such swiftness. Soon after, the Minister of Justice was accused of abusing his power, fabricating false cases, and perverting justice. The Dingyuan general was also exposed for arrogance and insubordination within the military. All these men were secretly followers of Zhao Qingzhan. Overnight, they were all framed and stripped of their positions. Yanqing blocked my path, his smugness unmistakable. I will never allow the tragedy of the Wuling Marquis' household to repeat itself. This time, the outcome remains uncertain. For now, you hold the upper hand, but only for now. As my words fell, resentment flashed across his face. In your eyes, am I forever inferior to him? Yes, you are. My words left no room for compromise. He sneered coldly, is that so? Once he's dead, there'll be no one left to compare him to me. Then, we'll resume our unfinished betrothal. With that, he swept his sleeves and departed. I, however, fell deep in thought. Yan Shiheng's words weren't simple. Saying something like that couldn't just be a curse or venting anger. Unless they were planning something big. I ordered my men to keep a close watch on the movements of the third prince and Yanqing. The third prince's residence and the Marquis of Wooling's estate remained uncharacteristically quiet. Everything proceeding as usual. Yet my intuition told me something was amiss. The crimson leaves of fragrant hills were breathtakingly beautiful. While touring outside the city, I spotted a group of men in plain clothes leaving the city gates. There was nothing unusual about them, except for the emblem embroidered on their collars, a flying swallow. Ordinary people wouldn't recognize it. But in my past life, when the third prince fell from grace, these men risked their lives to protect him. This was the emblem of the third prince's elite assassins, the Mist Blades. Wherever the Mist Blades appeared, bloodshed followed. So this time, whose life were they coming for? In a flash, a thought struck me. Trouble, the west suburb's scenic hill was no longer safe. Zhao Qingzhan feigning illness to evade trouble was exactly what they expected. They had backup plans, intending to seize this opportunity to take his life. Realizing everything, I headed straight for the Crane Cup Tavern. Please announce my arrival. I seek an audience with the 17th Master. The 7th Prince is in peril. Dispatch men immediately to accompany me to Jing Mountain. Their eyes sharpened at the sight of the jade pendant in my hand. They swiftly mustered their men and set out at dusk. This jade pendant, given to me by Zhao Qingzhan, commands his most secretive hidden guards. I swung onto my horse and rode with them toward Jing Mountain. There was no time to waste. Yet when we arrived, we witnessed only the panicked flight of those men. Now, caught between two forces, they had no escape. From my horseback, I saw Zhao Qingzhan standing high above, hands clasped behind his back. Behind him stood a dense forest of archers, their bows trained on the death-sworn men. Arrows flew in a hail, leaving no survivors. They were death-sworn men, with no retreat possible. They would bite their tongues to end their lives rather than burden their master. Since no survivors were to be left, Zhao Qingzhan showed no mercy. As dusk deepened, moonlight bathed the blood-soaked ground. Spotting me, he smiled. You couldn't bear to see me die here after all. In such a grave moment, he still found time for jest. I had warned him that day, Yanqing had defected to the third prince. His feigned illness and retreat to Jing Mountain were but a trap, luring his enemy into the snare. This place had long been ambushed by archers. Tonight, every single fog blade would die here. Not a single loyal assassin under the third prince survived. Severing his left and right arms, crippling his strength, that was Zhao Qingzhan's true objective. News of Zhao Qingzhan's assassination attempt at Jing Mountain in the western suburbs reached the court. Moreover, hidden weapons were found on the dead loyalists, crafted from black iron exclusively supplied to the imperial family. Yet such black iron was only found in the residences of a few favored princes. Among them, only the third prince possessed the means to maintain such elite assassins. All suspicion now fell upon the third prince. Rumors even spread that the lightning strike at the altar of heaven was divine retribution for someone plotting to harm his brothers. His Majesty also admonished him during the morning court session. Though no concrete evidence existed, everyone suspected him. Once planted, such seeds of suspicion proved more potent than any proof. His Majesty personally issued an edict to recall Zhao Qingzhan to the capital. During this period, the Ministry of Justice's Minister of Justice had been thoroughly investigated for abusing his power. His actions that day had been in strict accordance with the law, and the charges against him were unfounded. The so-called evidence presented by others had been sent by Zhao Qingzhan himself, intended to deceive the third prince into believing he held the upper hand, provoking him to strike with lethal force. As for the matter involving the Dingyuan general, it was entirely his own doing. He deliberately provoked conflict, with some in the army interceding on his behalf. He now seized the opportunity to accept punishment, turning a major incident into a minor one. The third prince not only lost his most trusted loyalist but also incurred the emperor's suspicion. Yet for Zhao Qingzhan, his predicament was far from resolved. Just as I pondered how to arrange a meeting with him, he scaled the wall late at night and came to the Shin residence. Seeing him appear atop the Shin family wall surprised me. In my past life, he would never have done such a thing. I happened to be lying awake in the rocking chair in the courtyard. He descended from the roof, smoothed his sleeves, and approached me with a smile in his eyes. He picked up the fan beside me quite naturally and began fanning me. After you feigned illness and showed weakness everywhere, His Majesty may have developed reservations about the third prince. But that doesn't mean his suspicions toward you have completely vanished. There is a move before us that could completely resolve your current predicament. I spoke slowly. He gently waved the fan, fanning me intermittently, eager to hear more. You voluntarily surrender your military authority and petition to reinforce the Northwest defenses. My voice was slightly lowered, yet my tone was resolute. No prince would dare relinquish command and retreat to the northwest at such a critical juncture. This move would dispel His Majesty's suspicions entirely. What others would deem an impossible path becomes the most advantageous position for him. In my past life, the Qing family's army stationed in the northwest ultimately became his most trusted confidants, contributing greatly to his grand ambitions. Now, we merely accelerate the process by ostensibly relinquishing all military authority and heading to the northwest. Far from the capital's power struggles, he ensures that once he secures the Qing family's forces, the third prince stands no chance of victory. As I spoke slowly, a smile touched his lips. You alone understand me, he praised. I came tonight to bid farewell. I have submitted my memorial. An imperial decree should arrive tomorrow. It seems he had already anticipated everything I had considered. Yet in this matter, we must still guard against Yan Xing. While others may be unaware of the schemes Zhao Qingzhan and I are plotting, Yan Xing knows. The Qing family's army in the northwest will become Zhao Qingzhan's sharpest blade. That force is unstoppable. I don't know when I'll return. In the capital, be cautious in all matters. If anyone troubles you, avoid direct conflict. Wait until I return to resolve it. He couldn't help but add one more piece of advice. I lifted my gaze and said, Rest assured. I've never been a vine that needs protection. I remember you once said you wished to be a sturdy tree, not a clinging vine. His voice was low and slightly hoarse. I wish to be a sturdy tree, not a clinging vine, to weather storms and share misfortune with your highness. Those were the words I spoke to him on our wedding night in a past life, meant to lift his spirits. Later, we truly became lifelong allies, standing shoulder to shoulder, bound by a lifetime of trust. When he passed, the frost of time had already touched his temples. Clutching my hand tightly, he murmured hoarsely, This life ascended to the throne. Yet holding hands to this day, I still feel so much regret. Now, thinking back, it is all a distant memory, beyond recall. When the imperial edict arrived and Yan Xing learned Zhao Qingzhan had journeyed far to the northwest, he was powerless to stop him. While the third prince gloated, convinced Zhao Qingzhan had made a foolish move, Yan Xing felt uneasy. He knew that when Zhao Qingzhan returned, the third prince would face an inevitable defeat. Yet the third prince did not believe him. The string of previous defeats had already eroded the third prince's trust in his abilities. A rift had formed between them. Chu Qianyue feigned illness and departed for her ancestral home. This replay of a past event, one that should never have resurfaced, caught my attention. By all accounts, she shouldn't have acted this way in this lifetime. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Sure enough, she left the capital not for her ancestral home, but headed straight for the northwest. If my guess is correct, she went to find Zhao Qingzhan. She wanted to win back his heart. For a noble lady of her standing to muster such courage was truly remarkable. Behind this, perhaps someone had guided her. Months passed swiftly. When Yan Xing appeared before me, I was not surprised. The third prince refused to heed his counsel, unwilling to expend further effort in the barren northwest. Yet Yan Xing understood the stakes of the future. How could he stand idly by? A secret letter arrived from the northwest. The seventh prince had left Chu Qianyu to manage his daily affairs. By the time he returned, perhaps they would be inseparable. His eyes sparkled with mockery as he studied my reaction. Wouldn't that be exactly what you wanted? You should be pleased. My tone was utterly calm, my emotions not the slightest bit stirred. Yet Yan Xing felt a pang of defeat. Pressing me, why won't you admit that Chu Qianyu always held a special place in Zhao Qingzhan's heart? You still don't understand, I replied. Whether it's true or not matters little to me. Trying to sow discord only makes you look petty. I brushed it off with casual indifference. But Yan Xing persisted stubbornly. You'll come to realize Zhao Qingzhan is no good. His childhood sweetheart remains the most special person in his heart. He only values your worth and seeks to use you. Choosing him is a mistake. I scoffed. Was choosing you the right choice? He fell silent for a moment before saying, in my past life, I deceived you. But this time, I'm determined to make amends. I've changed. After you rejected my marriage proposal last life, you openly courted the lady of Shaohua County. You two became a perfect match. Did you ever care about my fate then? If Zhao Qingzhan isn't a good man, what kind of good man are you? Faced with my questioning, his gaze flickered, regret flashing in his eyes. Don't mention that woman. If not for her, the Wuling Marquis' household wouldn't have fallen step by step. How laughable. Even now, he still shifts all blame onto women. The Wuling Marquis' household neglected its moral duties. Its sons were all dissolute. Its gradual decline was fate itself. You cannot blame others. In my previous life, though I held high rank, I never held the past humiliations inflicted upon the Yen family in any regard. Nor did I deliberately target him. Yet even so, the Wuling Marquis' household brought its downfall upon itself. Its dissolute scions caused a fatal incident involving a capital offense, leading to the revocation of their title and exile. In his twilight years, Yan Xing was confined to Xiangshan Ancient Temple for over a decade, contemplating his transgressions before the Buddha. Mentioning the Wuling Marquis' downfall stirred his emotions visibly. His voice turned cold as he declared, during my 13 years confined at Xiangshan Temple, I practiced asceticism before the Buddha. The world assumed I had renounced worldly attachments and let go of my obsessions. But that was not the case. Whenever I recalled the collapse of the Marquis of Wuling's family, the dissipation of its glory and splendor, I could not sleep night after night, haunted by nightmares. I cursed you, cursed the imperial family. I made a vow before the Buddha, if I could start over, I would gladly give up half my lifespan and renounce reincarnation. So his obsession ran this deep. But even if he could start over, victory was far from certain. Whispers began to circulate in the capital about Chu Qianyu accompanying the seventh prince. After Zhao Qingzhan departed, not a single letter arrived from the northwest. Before long, the year drew to a close. The emperor fell ill, summoning him back to the capital. Yet when he returned, Chu Qianyu stood beside him in a vibrant gown, dazzlingly radiant. Spotting me, she deliberately drew closer to Zhao Qingzhan, nearly pressing herself against him. Witnessing this scene, I turned and returned to the Shen residence. Outside, rumors swirled. Some claimed the seventh prince was replacing his principal consort. Others said he intended to grant Chu Qianyu the title of secondary consort. After his return, he never sought me out, yet paraded Chu Qianyu through the streets, attending banquets everywhere. I shut myself away in the Shen residence, disengaging from external affairs. But on New Year's Eve, the palace banquet was an event I could not avoid. I went alone and saw Chu Qianyu seated beside Zhao Qingzhan, pouring wine for him with her head bowed. Whatever he whispered caused her cheeks to flush. and she covered her face with a soft laugh. I took my seat alone. Every gaze in the room fixed upon me. Whispers already circulated about his fickleness. Last time he offered a priceless treasure as betrothal. Yet now he openly cold-shouldered me. I stepped outside for air, only to find Chu Qianyu following me. Now I understand why he didn't choose me at the victory banquet. I thought you'd won his heart. But it turns out he only valued your worth. He was using you. As she spoke these words, her face betrayed unmistakable delight. This lifetime, untouched by misfortune, she truly did harbor a genuine affection for him. Yan Qing told you, didn't he? She remained silent. But her silence was an admission. I chuckled softly before asking, did he also say that the seventh prince's heart has always been yours? That if you'd only lower yourself and use underhanded tactics, you could return to him, shatter the alliance between him and me, and sow discord between us until we're at odds? When I spoke these words, astonishment flashed in her eyes. Seems I hit the nail on the head again. She'd gladly become Yan Shiheng's pawn, all to return to Zhao Qingzhan's side. Rumor has it she resorted to many self-inflicted wounds when she first arrived in the northwest. The only one who could help her advance step by step and win Zhao Qingzhan's pity once more was Yan Qing. After catching her breath, she shrugged it off. So what if you know? He doesn't value you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have humiliated you like this. Footsteps approached from afar. Chu Qianyu seized the moment to collapse onto the snow, her voice trembling with feigned tears. Sister Shin, why did you push me? No matter how clumsy the trick. I merely watched coldly. Zhao Qingzhan approached, his face etched with anxiety. He glared at me with fury, consumed by jealousy, the very behavior of a jealous wife. With that, he scooped Chu Qianyue into his arms and strode away. Chu Qianyue's gaze never left me, the pride of a victor. What a pity! After over a decade of childhood friendship, she still didn't understand him. Romantic entanglements and heroic shortcomings weren't his style. This charade? I didn't mind playing along. After the new year, His Majesty's illness worsened. Yet Zhao Qingzhan still chose to journey to the northwest. Any clear-eyed observer could see, if His Majesty did not survive this ordeal, his departure would play right into the third prince's hands. With his reach stretched thin, he would be at a disadvantage everywhere, ultimately left at the mercy of others. In my past life, the emperor was not gravely ill at this time. Now, with everything having changed, I could not say whether he would overcome this crisis. The emperor's condition deteriorated daily. He had summoned his senior ministers to the palace to draft his will. This illness had come on strangely. Only when Consort Zhuang delivered the news did they learn the emperor had been poisoned. The poisoner was none other than the third prince. He had already become all-powerful within the capital. The ministers summoned to the palace had been placed under house arrest. A storm is brewing. I have ordered the hidden guards to lie in wait. The only man who could drive the third prince to such desperate, cornered desperation is likely Yan Qing. If my guess is correct, after Yan Qing and the third prince fell out, Yan Qing, desperate to alter the fate of the Marquis of Wuling's household, revealed the entire future outcome to the third prince. His aim was to provoke him, to push him to win by any means necessary. Knowing his impending defeat and the emperor's intention to pass the throne to Zhao Qingzhan, the third prince chose to strike first. He could no longer wait patiently. Or rather, he dared not wait, nor dare gamble. It must be said, Yan Qing played a risky move, forcing the third prince forward. Yet a masterstroke that could achieve his goal. The terror of impending defeat would strip the third prince of reason, driving him to madness, just like Yan. Now, the third prince controlled both inside and outside the imperial city. Citing the emperor's critical illness, he urgently summoned Zhao Qingzhan back to the capital. The report stated Zhao Qingzhan would arrive in 15 days. They believed this news. 15 days hence, This imperial city would be sealed tight as an iron barrel, a mere formality to capture the turtle in the jar. Yet, knowing Zhao Qingzhan as I do, he would lead his army to the city gates within 3 days. In my residence, I ran my fingers over the jade pendant he had given me. This time, it would likely prove his aid. Inside and outside forces working together, we'd done this countless times in our past lives. This time's coordination was no exception. 3 days later, Zhao Qingzhan led the Qing family's northwest army to the city gates, bearing the emperor's personally written edict to rescue the throne. Beneath the imperial walls, he denounced the third prince as a traitorous rebel, a man deserving of execution by all. That edict? I had my hidden guards retrieve it from the palace. The third prince believed his palace defenses were impregnable. Little did he know I had lived there for decades. Within the Sinang Palace lay an undiscovered secret passage, leading directly to the hidden river outside the palace walls. With the imperial edict in hand, Zhao Qingzhan's return with his troops was now justified, to rescue the emperor, purge the court of treacherous ministers, and eliminate the wicked officials. His unexpected early arrival caught the third prince completely off guard. According to the third prince's calculations, Zhao Qingzhan should have taken at least another 10 days to reach the capital. Yet unexpectedly, he arrived silently and swiftly. The third prince and Yan Xing held such unwavering confidence because they had placed spies around Chu Qianyue, monitoring Zhao Qingzhan's every move. They used Chu Qianyue as a pawn, allowing her to remain by Zhao Qingzhan's side so that the maid serving as their spy could stay, acting as their eyes and ears to relay intelligence. Zhao Qingzhan chose to play along, deliberately keeping Chu Qianyue by his side while using her maid to relay false intelligence. Previously, he had intentionally sent genuine reports back to lull the third prince and Yan Xing into complacency, making them fully trusting. This time, however, he deliberately had them relay false intelligence to sow confusion. Upon receiving the message, the third prince assumed he would arrive in the capital in 15 days. Little did he know it would be in 3. In truth, he had already departed from the northwest. I understood the moment he returned last time, he intended to use Chu Qianyue as part of a grand scheme. I never received a single letter he sent from the northwest. Yet letters always found their way around via Yinzhong County, delivered under the guise of the Xie family. Both he and I knew that any correspondence from the northwest would inevitably be intercepted by the third prince and his men. This was the unspoken understanding between us. As for Chu Qianyue, in my past life, she knelt outside Feni Palace amidst a blinding snowstorm, begging me for the chance to become my servant. Even then, Zhao Qingzhan showed not a shred of mercy. How could he suddenly forgive her in this life? Alas, Yan Xing remained unaware of this past episode. Playing the victim, feigning weakness, these tactics had proven futile in her previous life, earning her not a shred of pity. Once untrustworthy, forever unreliable. That was Zhao Qingzhan's unwavering principle. Sadly, Yan Xing knew nothing of it. The Qing family's forces advanced like a tidal wave, encircling the entire imperial city. The third prince had mobilized the Western Mountain garrison and the imperial guards early on, but these forces were no match for the seasoned troops stationed in the northwest. Though the city walls teemed with archers and crossbowmen, their arrows flew thick and fast. Yet they could not stem the tide of the Qing family's assault. I watched the chessboard unfold from within the mansion. The endgame was nigh. Finally, at the break of dawn, a new light dawned upon the imperial city. Zhao Qingzhan led his troops to breach the defenses, charging straight for the Qianyuan Hall to rescue the emperor. The third prince, believing he could catch a turtle in a jar, found himself trapped in someone else's trap instead. Victory was decided, the game was over. Zhao Qingzhan ordered men to escort me into the palace. Along the way, ruins and broken walls lay strewn with corpses. Such cruelty I had witnessed many times in my past life. Power struggles have always been drenched in blood. Yan Xing seemed to have lost his mind. He clung to the delusion that the Wuling Marquis' mansion would regain its former glory and splendor. He repeated endlessly that the Wuling Marquis family would never be destroyed, stripped of their title and exiled. 10 years of ascetic devotion before the Buddha had not calmed his spirit. Instead, it had bred his inner demons. In this life, nightmares haunted him night after night. Yet this existence ended even more swiftly and bitterly than the last. He tore free from the soldier's grasp and leapt from the high city wall, muttering, "Death is good. Death brings release." When I entered the palace, Zhao Qingzhan already stood vigil at the emperor's bedside, flanked by 4 senior ministers. The poison ran too deep, beyond any remedy. Now he merely made his final arrangements. His last imperial decree: the throne shall pass to the 7th prince. All matters settled. No further suspense remained. He ascended the throne, reclaiming the supreme imperial seat. The Wuling Marquis' household, implicated in the succession plot and rebellion, faced the punishment of exterminating 9 clans. Even with Yan Xing dead, the entire Marquis' household remained guilty beyond escape. That haughty Marquis' wife hanged herself that very night. Chu Qianyue confronted me in fury, refusing to believe Zhao Qingzhan had lost all affection for her. I told her the whole truth myself, but she refused to believe in rebirth, much less that in a past life, she had abandoned Zhao Qingzhan when he was wounded and crippled. She accused me of lying. She rushed to Zhao Qingzhan for confirmation, only to meet his icy, cold gaze. She feared him, yet stubbornly demanded an answer. When his answer came, she collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down her face. So this was the bitter fruit I had sown in my past life. Knowing her hope was lost, she chose to shave her head and enter a convent. Zhao Qingzhan invited me to join him atop the tower, overlooking the capital. "You and I," he said, "still reign over this imperial city." Hearing this, I shook my head and smiled softly. The ruler of this imperial city is His Majesty alone. His gaze darkened instantly. "What do you mean? Now that we've achieved our goals, Your Majesty, please honor your promise." He smiled dismissively. "Empress of the realm, ruler of the harem, isn't that position sufficient?" I bowed my head and declared firmly, "In this life, I refuse to enter the inner palace again. I refuse to be the ruler of the harem. I beg Your Majesty to grant me permission to leave." A realization seemed to dawn on him, his expression darkening instantly. "Shen Ziqing, from the very beginning, you planned to leave?" "Yes. From the start, I contemplated how to retire after achieving my goals. How to escape this imperial city that has imprisoned me for half my life. The outcome in my previous life was favorable, but that doesn't mean the journey was easy. A lifetime spent exhausting my mind and energy, advancing cautiously step by step, ever fearful of a single misstep leading to eternal ruin. Palace intrigues, power struggles, open and hidden threats. I could only advance, never retreat. Back then, I had no choice. Even in the deadliest straits, I had to find a way out. When heaven offered only that arduous path, I had to part the clouds and the fog to glimpse the sky. But if given the chance to choose again, I wouldn't pick that road. In my past life, the arranged marriage was one I had to accept. From the very beginning, it was a choice made under duress. The majestic imperial city felt more like a shackle. Such a life could never be lived freely. Your Majesty should know that in our past life, we were allies, not lovers. Our goals aligned, but our hearts did not. My voice was firm, without a trace of hesitation or doubt. Disappointment and gloom flashed across his face. Yet he stubbornly persisted. "Perhaps this time will be different? In the past life, Your Majesty and I were allies. We did not speak of deep affection. I would not ask Your Majesty whether I or the Empire held greater weight. Nor would I ask if Your Majesty could leave the 6 palaces empty for me. I could have played the role of the virtuous empress, governing the harem with a balance of leniency and strictness, impartial and unbiased. But in this life, if your majesty wishes to speak of affection, then I must ask, can your majesty pledge to love only me? For a lifetime? Precisely because there was no romantic attachment in our past life. We were the best of allies. I had no excessive expectations of him. So there was no room for disappointment or resentment. Whether he has 3,000 beauties or welcomes new consorts into the palace. I care not. Because I care not. I remain rational and clear-headed, never losing my composure. You wish me to retreat in the face of difficulty? No sooner had he spoken than I replied, it seems your majesty understands better than anyone that this is impossible. No. I can try. Your majesty. Why deceive yourself? General Cheng has served you faithfully all these years. And his daughter holds unwavering devotion for you. Do you truly wish to break the heart of a loyal minister? His expression froze. Indeed. He cannot do it. In my past life, General Cheng's daughter entered the palace to become a consort. This life will be no different. He never considered these things. Perhaps. In his eyes, maintaining everything as it was in the past is best. Grant me the Empress's position, then appoint 4 consorts, and beneath them countless beauties. But I am no longer the person I once was. And what I desire has changed. I have tasted the pinnacle of splendor. Half my life was spent shackled, as if wearing chains. This time, I crave freedom. The world is vast, I wish only to follow my heart. After 2 lifetimes of twists and turns, I beg your majesty to grant me this. As my words fell, he knew my resolve. Yet stubbornness took root within him. He confined me to Qingyun Hall within the palace. I neither protested nor made a scene, eating and drinking as I should each day. He said he was waiting for the day I came to my senses. But I had already seen things as clearly as they could be. His Majesty would not yield, he waited for me to yield. He waited for me to become, as in my past life, a virtuous empress. Ah Qing, he said, wouldn't it be better to repeat the past? I shook my head slowly. To live that life once was enough. Why repeat it? Before the empress was crowned, the imperial consort had already entered the palace. Inside and outside the palace, preparations were made with great fanfare. The atmosphere bustling with excitement. This was precisely the moment I'd been waiting for. The palace's clamor and the chaos of its affairs made it the perfect time to flee. I had already arranged for people outside the palace to assist me. Using a secret passage, I escaped the imperial palace and headed for the water town in Jiangnan. I knew Zhao Qingzhan's temperament well. He might be angry for a while, but he wouldn't involve the Shen family. Precisely because I understood him so well, I felt completely unafraid. In my 2nd month in the water town, he came looking for me. His entourage was light, and his attire made him look like a wealthy young master, not someone intent on bringing me back. He waited for me to yield, and I waited for him to see reason. Yet he settled into the water town with me, never mentioning the past or the affairs of the harem, avoiding all the complexities and disturbances. By day, he feigned leisure, reading books with me, sipping tea, playing chess, admiring flowers. I would personally prepare lotus seed soup for him. Yet night after night, stacks of memorials arrived, and he often reviewed them until midnight. This routine lasted half a month before urgent dispatches arrived from the capital, summoning him back immediately. His stay here was never meant to be long, that much was expected. A look of reluctance flashed across his face. But in the end, he had no choice but to ride back to the capital that very night. A month later, an imperial edict descended upon the realm. Shen Ziqing, the legitimate daughter of the Shen family, was to be crowned empress, setting an example for the 6 palaces and embodying the motherly virtue of the realm. The Shin family was granted the title of first-rank duke, hereditary and perpetual. Yet that very night, it was announced that the empress had suddenly fallen gravely ill and would convalesce at the Jiangnan summer palace, returning only after recovery. When the news reached me, I sighed softly. He needn't have gone to such lengths. In the season when osmanthus blossoms filled the air with fragrance, he reappeared in Jiangnan. I had come to understand, only by letting go and granting him freedom could I repay his 2 lifetimes of support. I gave the Shin family honor and glory, I gave him liberty. Thank you. The tacit understanding and trust between us seemed to speak for itself. He had his grand ambitions for the empire, I had my boundless horizons. Our paths diverged, destined never to converge again. Later, I beheld strange rocks and twisted pines, seas of clouds in the mountains, misty lakes in the rain, and the multicolored Donxia landscapes. My footsteps traversed the land from north to south, taking in every mountain, river, lake, and sea. Yet storytellers in tea houses always loved recounting one strange tale. Sighing deeply each time they mentioned it, the Empress Dowager retired to rest in her Jiangnan palace and never returned. The end.